right, please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator, Justine Brown, Vice President of Creative Development at Together, joined by Olympian Colleen Quigley, Olympic medalist, founder of And Mother, Alicia Montano, and two-time World Cup champion and pay equity trailblazer, Tobin Heath.
Good call, good call. Whoops, I didn't get that memo.
Wow, well, first of all, I just want to say how honored I am to be on stage with these three world-class athletes and me. They've all exercised more in their entire lives than I have even come close to. And then I also just want to start off by saying we, as a company, very much believe that everyone watches women's sports. That's my industry plant right there. I'm with Together, as you guys may have heard, and I would be remiss to not start by saying how excited we are about this new partnership that we have with Strava. We're very honored to partner with a company who gets it and understands the initiatives that we're driving forward, that these three have all helped trailblaze. I think that it's about more than that, though. I think it's about you all believing that you have a place on these fields and in these places as well. And I think that's what's so beautiful about women's sports is that it's created a community not just for the athletes, not just for the coaches, not just for the staffs, but for everybody who shows up every day and comes to a game, watches a game, participates. Like, it's really a community that harnesses the whole collective. So with that said, I want to acknowledge the contributions of the trailblazers on this panel that helped us get to this current moment. That is actually a movement that started long before now. All of these women have been a part of massive moments and movements throughout their careers to help lead us to this one. I want to start first with Tobin. You obviously, I think, were part of a moment that really started this watershed in women's sports, which was the 2019 World Cup, where we got to see you all dominate, be great, but also be celebrated in a way that you should be seen, and then lead to an equal pay fight that was won. Can you speak a little bit on both of those things? Yeah, let's give it up for that.
Yeah, I think 2019 was like kind of a culmination of, well, honestly, so many different fights. Basically, like, I guess how I would sum it up is I started on the US Women's National Team when I was just a teenager. It was like actually before I even was able to be compensated for even playing on the US Women's National Team. And the first like big thing I ever won, I was in college, so I couldn't get compensated for that either. And I think my teammates were stoked about it because it meant that they got a little bit more money. But I remember actually the first like official meeting I could be in as part of the US Women's National Team was after I graduated from college, in terms of like when we could talk about like the economics of how much you get paid and yada, 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 being on the team. And at this point, I had been on the team for, you know, a long time, but obviously not being paid. And I remember I went into this meeting and I left the meeting just like rocked. Like, at this point, I had just been like showing up and playing soccer because it was fun and I loved it. I didn't realize that like all the things that we see, like this awesome team winning Olympics and World Cups, like I didn't realize that there was a much bigger fight going on behind the scenes. You know, I just got to show up and play. And this meeting like really level set like my understanding of what it meant to play for the US Women's National Team. And I had been playing on this team for a while at this point. But I think we can all understand that, you know, we're all multi-hyphenates. You know, being a women's athlete, you're fighting for something so much bigger. So my first meeting, like we were talking about striking way, like pay equity, like that goes back generations. So then getting to that moment that you said in 2019, when we won our back-to-back World Cup, it was incredible because, you know, instead of us being, you know, celebrated for winning the World Cup, we certainly were. The whole stadium, as some of you might know, some of you may even have been there, was cheering equal pay. And that was the culmination of so much, and I think it really kicked off this huge what we're calling a movement. Like, we don't call it a moment. Like, this women's sports isn't having a moment. It's a movement, and it's a movement that we've all been participating in for a long time.
Yeah, and I believe so many of these moments led to that movement. The movement that we're in, like, was so many moments that have culminated over many, many years of people like all of you fought for things. I think one thing I just wanted to ask a little bit about that we don't get to see, and speaking of being multifaceted, was how much time you guys put in off the field to get this equal pay. And like, I think people don't know how many meetings you sat in, how many lawyers you met with. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, all I can say is, like, I don't recommend, like, trying to win, like, back-to-back World Cups and also suing your employee. Like, it makes for, like, really awkward, like, meal room, like interactions. Look, we were all trying to do the same thing, but, you know, it's tough sometimes. But I will say that just as many hours that went into us, you know, training, preparing, being, like, so focused to win, like, just as many hours were put in behind the scenes, in meetings, on calls, lawyers, like, you know, mediation, like, being educated, all these things. Like, we were running full-time jobs in a completely different way at the same time. And I mean, I think, you know, for us as women athletes, we hope to get to a place where that's not the case. I think it's honestly been a huge blessing. I've learned so much through the process, and honestly, I don't think there's anything more powerful than a women's athlete that knows and understands their own worth. It's an absolute game changer.
100%.
Well, I think all of us as women, period, want to thank you, so thank you so much. Alicia, you've had a lot of significant moments in your career, and you took up a bit of a different fight, which was fighting and advocating for women and pregnant women and mothers. And in 2014 at the USA Track and Field Championships, you ran 34 weeks pregnant to make a statement.
I did do that.
Which is insane. And I know you've told everybody that you can train and run 34 weeks pregnant, but if you could stop telling people that. I'm just kidding. I'm like, because I will not be doing that. No, I'm just kidding. So can you talk, a little bit about that moment, and then I want to get into the current moment that you're in, which has been being rewarded your bronze medal from 2012, which is...
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, I mean, I ran in 2014 more than, you know, showing people like, hey, you know, I can exercise in my pregnancy and also, you know, be an amazing person, and I care for my child at the same time. It's like there was this, for eons, like, women have been moving their bodies, being pregnant, having their kids, and keeping on going. And, you know, now we were looking at this time where we see women in their career tracks, and we see, you know, what it looks like to become a mom and then also keep going. And as it pertains to sports, I've been in these conversations like Tobin just talked about, all of these back-end conversations where people don't see, you're in these meetings asking for your value to be recognized. You're asking for your full humanhood, your full womanhood to be something that is honored. And so I was in these rooms asking them, hey, what would happen if I were to become pregnant and, like, become a mom and continue my career? And it was just pin drop conversations of just like, oh, we would just pause your contract and stop paying you. And this was, like, not in just a single room. This is like rooms across the board. And so you start to recognize there will be a target on my back if I bring up the words pregnancy, postpartum, and maternity, because this is not in anybody's contract. And also, just to Tobin's point, when you are showing up in these rooms when you're 20, 21 years old, first signing contracts, some of us teenagers, good job. You know, that's not what you're thinking. You're not thinking, who is protecting me in all facets of my career? And as we're seeing right now, you know, it's not just a moment, it's a movement, because we're sitting in all these rooms expecting for people to protect us, but we're the ones that have to protect us. And then we're the ones that have to come together as a collective and make sure that we're all collectively protected. So I recognized I had an opportunity to show what it looked like to be a woman in my career track who, you know, was entering motherhood and also wanted to continue her career. And that's why I did it, and I talked about it in a bunch of media, you know, interviews that I did after that. It's like, hey, you know, this is so important for not just the track world to see, but for society to see. We expect for women to carry the brunt of society. All of the businesses that are here, exist and make money because of women. We are the ones that birth the next generation for all of you to continue to have your businesses, but yet we're the ones that are stuffed to the wayside. So, and then from that, like those conversations continued. It was like, okay, so what does this mean from here? And I'm like, what it means from here is that we need to make sure that we have pregnancy protections, but the conversations are long. That was 2014, and it wasn't until 2019 that we got that done.
Yeah, they're still long
Amazing.
and still exhausting,
It's
and
still
it's happening at every level of sport for women.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, overemphasizing that there's definitely more work to do while also celebrating what has been accomplished. I want to talk about one other part that has happened recently that is worth being acknowledged. In 2024, 12 years after the 2012 Olympics, you have been told that you'll be awarded your bronze medal after a doping investigation. Disqualified, yeah. You deserve to be celebrated. Thank you. Yeah, and that's.
Sorry, thank you. What was the question?
It's okay. Take your time. I think the number one part that I was going to say is that you absolutely deserve to be celebrated, and you deserve a proper celebration. And what I was going to lead to is what is not seen in that moment is the heartache that comes with it and what was lost. And that was the moment in real time. That was the moment with your family. That was the moment on the podium. But also all the incentives and contracts that you lose by just not being a medalist. All the money that you lose over the next 8 years in a sport that has a 4-year cycle where you get the most visibility. And so while you had this thing that you got, like, I wanted you to speak a little bit, which I think is very clear on, like, the pain and the symbol that it caused, but also you're wearing Cliff on your head right now, and I think they deserve a shout out, and sponsors like them deserve a shout out, because one thing that Cliff Bar, and you can correct if I get any of this wrong, did was they weren't even one of your sponsors in the 2012 Olympics, and they're going to go back and pay incentives for a bronze medal in 2012. And that's the type of showing up that I know a lot of you are in this room, and like, we have no problem putting the pressure on, but that's the type of showing up that matters. That's the type of showing up that makes a difference. That's the type of showing up that gets you your PR that you're looking for, if that's what it is. But we would like it to be more, and we'd like to see the initiatives behind it. And so shout out to them, shout out to the sponsors who are recouping some of that money that you did not see and some of that moment that you lost. But can you speak on it yourself?
Oh my gosh, well, this was a moment, so thank you guys all, seriously. I didn't expect that, and obviously, the waterworks are one of those things that just end up happening. So I'm just realizing I haven't been in a room full of people since that moment. So thank you all for, being here and for supporting me and, just what we got to do from here, which is a lot. But, you talked about time loss, and we all know, like, that you can't recoup time. There are very real things that have existed in that time. We talk about equal pay, we talk about what we fight for. And in those 12 years period of time, it's like every single room that I was in, over a dozen of rooms that I was in from 11, 12, 13, were all like, oh, for the medalists, we are offering this much money. But as a potential medalist, you can potentially get this much money. And we're talking like millions of dollars of loss. And not just that, like the biggest thing is like, we talk about women's careers, and we know that I ran pregnant in 2014, and part of that is, these conversations I have with my family, which is like, okay, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna get these medals, like this is a period of time, heads down, no to the wedding, no to the being the bridesmaid, no to the bachelorette party, no to the thing, because it's like right now it's heads down and this is what I'm doing. And for these reasons, like I know my body, I know what I wanna do with my family, and I'm hopeful that becoming a mom is something I could also do in my career, but that's also time. That's very real time. And I had to tell myself, looking at the landscape 11, 12, 13, like I know I medaled. I know I medaled. It's not this like, sour grape situation of like, why did these women beat me? It's like, and everybody asks, like, how do you know? It's like, if you're in the scene, you know. It's like people who have never been on this world stage all of a sudden are there, and you're like, how did this happen? So I knew, and that was a part that let me give myself peace to say, like, I would change nothing. I would change nothing. I did every single thing that I possibly could to show up to the start line and finish with every single ounce of my being laid on the line. Every last one of those photos that you see in those races, I'm on the ground. Like, I laid it out there every single time. And so it allowed me to tell myself, like, another part of me, this multifaceted woman that I am, also wants to have my child. And I would have never, if I couldn't tell myself and give myself peace to tell myself, like, you deserve to be happy. And if part of your happiness is starting your family, you need to be able to do that. And so, my medals look like, 11, 12, 13, 14 is my daughter. And, I'm never, ever, ever going to say that a medal is worth more than having her. And she's the one that opened the door to our family and our life and allowed me to have 2 more kids after that, because I was like, she's a rock star, and hopefully, her brothers are wild, but hopefully she can help. Hopefully she can help keep them in line. So anyways, that was the moment for me that also allowed for me to see her in how I saw the future of women's sports.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're all honored to have been able to be the first people to get to celebrate you, and I hope it's the first of many. And I hope we see you have a proper ceremony at the Olympics here in LA. So
yeah, LA 2028, let's go.
we're here to champion. Colleen, I feel like what I want to speak to you about kind of is a culmination of a couple of these things, but after being an Olympian and being a world champion, you took the brave move to leave your major sponsor and spoke out on challenging contractual bonus structures, incentives, and reductions in your contract. Can you speak a little bit on that and your journey with that?
Yeah, I really related to what you said, Tobin, about being kind of like young and naive when you first started and just having fun, being on the team, like, cool, this is awesome, and not really understanding the landscape of like what all was going on around you. Because that was definitely true for me too. I graduated from Florida State and joined a pro team out in Portland, and there was a few other, pro women, and we were just kind of, the team was growing and everything was awesome. I was making teams. Every summer I made the team, and it was just good times. And then, when things started, I started getting injured, things kind of started falling apart with the team. And then I started to kind of see other things in the landscape that kind of was like, oh, okay, like I kind of get how this works now. Like when things are going great and hunky-dory, it looks like this. When things kind of aren't going so great, it doesn't look like that anymore. And so that was definitely like a wake-up call for me, and a learning moment to understand, like, what do I bring to the table as a professional athlete, as a member of this team, as a not member of, just on my own, what do I bring, and just kind of understanding my value. At that point, I had parted ways with my agent, and so I was representing myself. So even more so, trying to figure out what my value was and how to represent myself and my family and my country and all that kind of thing in the best way possible. And so at that time, my first contract with Nike was up for renewal, and I was trying to figure out if I wanted to keep working with them. And basically what happened was I just felt like they didn't understand all the things I was just saying. They didn't understand me and what I brought to the table and what I could offer, even outside of running around in circles and jumping over hurdles. I just felt like we were not on the same, we're not reading the same book, and that became really clear in contract negotiations. And so at that point I was really scared to be like, I would be crazy to leave this setup. Like, people are gonna think I'm absolutely insane if I say no to this behemoth company and go out and like jump into, in my mind, the idea was like, I'm jumping into this pool, I'm jumping off the diving board into the deep end of a pool, but I don't even know if there's water in there or not. I'm like, I could just splat you know, like that's terrifying. And so I didn't know like if I should do that or not. And actually one person at the time who was really inspirational to me was Allison Felix. She was also, had right before then just decided to leave Nike. Her battle was similar to Alicia's in maternal rights. And she had said, you know, she was in those rooms where they said, you know, we don't pay you to have children. So, you know, you're gonna have to take a cut. And she said, no. And she walked away. And I thought, damn, like if Allison Felix can walk away from Nike, who am I to say like, oh, I can't, you know, I was like, okay, like if she can do it, I can do it type of thing. And so that was like about, I can't remember exact timeline, I think it was about a year before I had made the decision to step away. And I did, I stepped away into the deep end of, I had no other thing. I had said no to that, and I didn't have anything to turn around and say yes to. I just had to like go on, I'm not even a religious person, I had to go on faith. I was like, I just gotta know that this is the right thing for me and it'll work out. Like I'll find the right partner. And then a couple months later, someone from Lululemon reached out and said, hey, we're like launching footwear, running shoes, and we're looking for a pro runner, which at the time, they hadn't sponsored anyone like that before, and I didn't think that was an option. And I was like, sick, like I'm a pro runner and I love Lululemon, and it all worked out. And I ended up making 3 times as much as I was gonna make with Nike, and it was like, everyone was happy, but it was like scary times. But yeah, talking about people like who come before you, and then you have your place, and then someone else will come after me. It was like, yeah, there were people that showed me the way and like inspired me, and then I did something, and then maybe someone else will see that, and now we have a whole team of runners and track and field athletes at Lululemon. I was kind of the pin, you know, to try and like make that happen, and now we have a team. So yeah, I just loved how those stories play out of like, you know, I'm not gonna be the last one in this thing, but it's really fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And I think like once again, shout out to the sponsors willing to see athletes and female athletes as holistic people and supporting them holistically.
Totally.
As we already sort of mentioned, and to your point, like obviously like we've said, the moments have all been here to lead to this movement that we're in, and we're in a moment right now for sure this year of women's sports where we've seen just like records broken, records smashed. You guys saw the video. It's all very real. I think that when you say like, you did it because the next one can come, it's so easy to say that, and probably so hard to not get bitter and be like, well, glad they're gonna get what we didn't get. But the truth is, like, you guys are moving mountains for future generations. You really are leaving these places better than you found it, and that matters. And so I wanna start by saying, rattling off a few of the things that happened just this year, and this is very much the few. I mean, I could do this for 8 pages if you guys wanted me to, but obviously this year we saw record viewership for the Women's Basketball National Championship. It was the most watched basketball game, men's, women's, pro, or college since 2019. It had 18.7 million viewers average and peaked at 24 million, crushing all previous records. So huge moment there. Obviously, we've all heard about the Caitlin Clark effect, but we've seen so many other stars and names come out of this tournament, including Camila Cardoso, Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, Hannah Hidalgo. So like, my advice would be keep tuning in. A record 2.1 million people tuned into the season opener of the Sun vs. the Fever, a WNBA record. WNBA ticket prices are up, NWSL ticket prices are up, Pro Volleyball League launched, the PWHL launched, the new NWSL TV deal went into effect, and they are seeing record attendance. Nebraska Volleyball set the world record for attendance in women's sports with a crowd of 92,003 people at their football stadium. So everyone who said they wouldn't show up, I think if you build it, they will come. Yeah. This summer will be the first Olympics ever to achieve full gender parity, 50-50 in the field of play. Give it up for that. And a moment I experienced myself that gave me chills for an entire, I don't know how many weeks I was there, 5. The Women's World Cup was absolutely incredible. Seeing Australia play in front of a sold-out home crowd at Stadium Australia. 75,784 was a record home audience for a women's football match in Australia during the Women's World Cup. So all that to say, that is so the tip of the iceberg, but do you guys have any personal favorite moments from this monumental year in women's sports?
All of them.
All of that. I mean, I think that I guess my next question that I wanted to ask you guys, like, when you think of your own careers and these moments that led to this movement, like, do you each have a moment that stood out for, like, that was celebrated, that was amazing, that you really, like, think about and are like, that changed things? Do you have anything that you could speak on that?
I'm not a very good favorites person. I'm like, you know, people ask me, like, who's your favorite athlete? I'm like the person that comes up with this metaphorical super athlete. Blame it on being a theater major. But I think it's what we've talked about in my career. Like, I think I didn't know that running at USA Nationals as, you know, the 5-time national champion at the time, you know, just taking my spot on the track as I deserve to, as a, you know, 34-week pregnant person, to help, you know, show the visibility of what it looked like to be a woman in my career track was going to make such a big change into how we are seeing mothers in sports now, and allow for a lot of athletes who are thinking about their motherhood knew that they could come to me and talk about it. Like, we could have like a very safe space of talking about what do we need to do from here. I had no idea that was going to do that. I thought it was going to be like our little small track world, running 2 times around the track, and they're like, Alicia will be back next year, thumbs up, and like that blowing the lid off of that for me, I think was huge. It changed a lot of how I recognized how incredibly, I mean, I knew it, but how incredibly powerful it is when women use their platform collectively to speak up and make change.
Awesome.
Do you have anything, Tobin?
Yeah, I think that all of like the records, like it's like, here's a record, there's a record, like when it comes to women's sports right now. And I'm kind of like at that point where I'm like, well, duh, like women's sports, duh. And I actually think like this t-shirt like kind of sums up like the zeitgeist of like what I've been feeling. There was actually like an iteration of this t-shirt before from another women's sports brand, and it said, watch women's sports. And it kind of like, and this is where I think like women's sports is and why this shirt in particular like really sums up where we are and where like kind of the next step is. Like this just says everyone watches women's sports. And in my opinion, we've gotten to a place where it's like, we don't like have to ask like, hey, can you watch us? Like, it's like, no, like everybody's watching us. Like, get on the train or like, don't, you know? And I think that's like the difference between asking for permission, like, hey, can women's sports get a spot on TV? And just being like, just hitting threes, you know? And like us celebrating that. And honestly, like there's so much, like we say like, oh, all these records, but like we have a long way to go. Like media inequity is like insane. Like, and that's where all the money in like professional sports is. And that's why we have to reimagine structures. And like, look, all these records are amazing. But like women's sports still like has to create structures that look and feel like them, that then create revenue streams that look and feel like them. And like that's when like kind of gender will disappear when we talk about like media equity and sports. Like, and I think that that's what I'm most excited about. Like, yeah, like I'm stoked for these records. Like I'm a massive Arsenal fan. Arsenal women will play all their home games at the Emirates next season.
I'm a new Arsenal fan, so I love
I just had to shout that out because I saw that, and it's like it's kind of like along this line of like duh. But I'm really stoked for women's sports, but I also see like we have like a long way to go, and doors will not be open for us. It's not like come in and take our primetime spot. Here it is for you. Like it's not going to be like that. And I feel like it's all around communities, and like I think of Strava. Like Strava is like such an incredible community that was based on like, you know, we're talking about this in women's sports. Why women's sports is like so powerful, and why this is a movement and not just a moment, and one that's been brewing and brewing and brewing, and why we're seeing this big explosion right now is because the community of like women's sports fans. These people are insanely tribal. Like I look around at these pictures and like you just feel like a sense of tribalism like in Strava in this room and all this kind of stuff. And women's sports fans are what we call tribal, and this is really powerful. Like this is like, this company Strava was built on the like top third of athletes, right? Like that's like what you went after, like the super like athletes that like want to compare themselves to the best. Well, when I think of like sports fans, I think the top third of all sports fans, like the ones that really go after it, those are women's sports fans.
Yep.
Those are the ones that have had to opt in every single time. You want to go watch it on TV? Where is it? I need to find it. Who's going to play? Oh, wait, I have to buy 10 different subscriptions. Oh, this is one I've never heard of. Oh, cool. Here's another $10 to something that I'll only just watch one game for 1 second because the next game's going to be on some other Bush League station. And like, and like that's what it's like. And like you have to be like so hyper focused as a women's sports fan like to really care about it. But what that has given us is an insane superpower. And like wherever there's kind of like a lack in this, like there's a huge opportunity. And we've done the same. Like, you know, we've started a community similar to Strava on that assumption. And it's huge. And it's a huge and powerful community that's absolutely changing the world and changing the world for the better because that is women's sports. So when we talk about women's sports, like it is the future of sports, and it's the future of like what new sports is, what new media is, what like progress and equity is. That is women's sports.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna give it up to that. Colleen, before we get to you, Tobin, you took me to like so many places we've gone in other chats, honestly, in rooms of women's sports fans, and I realize now we're in a room that maybe is a mix of everything, and so. Number one, I think like what you hit on that I think is worth reiterating is that is exactly why everyone watches women's sports exist is like the people in it who have lived it, like for somebody like me who's been part of teams but not on teams, for the athletes I'm sitting with, we were never asking for handouts or we were never a charity. We were never like, get on board. We were always like, we're here, you guys will figure it out eventually. And that still stands, like everyone does watch and rather than begging for a primetime spot, we're more like, give us the primetime spot and watch and see. And look what happened. You gave primetime spots, we broke records. You gave us good slots, good visibility, you broke records. So it is a conversation about visibility. I think it's the biggest place we need to go forward is media deals, media rights.
And then going a mile deep. Like I think we're getting to a point where we do have like, you know, a game like, you know, the Caitlin Clark's home opener, like that was just like absolutely crushed TV ratings. You know, like we're getting to this point where women's sports, like you can find it like here and there, but like going a mile deep, and like to Strava again, you go a mile deep into like your data, like you become obsessed with it. Like we need content around women's sports that goes a mile deep into the thing. So like you go to an Angel City game here in LA, and then for a week after that game, or if you watch it on TV, a week after that game, you can like look, listen, like hear content about that thing for like a whole week about it. Like right now we're stuck just with like, you know, and this has come a long way. We're stuck with like the pregame show and the halftime, and like this is big momentum in
we
women's
need
sports,
studio
but like
shows,
we need like a
we need
mile
shoulder programming.
freaking
Yes.
deep in women's sports. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for saying all of that, and that is I think definitely the next step we need to see. We're at 16% I think of the media share right now, which is up from 4%, but like that number needs to get to, I would hope 50% at least. But thank you for that. That was incredible. Colleen, I wanted to not skip over yours.
Yeah, well, you're asking about favorites, and I think the first thing that came to my head was like, the reason why someone has a favorite athlete is because they feel connected to that person for some reason. They know something about their story that makes you want to root for them. You don't want to root for someone necessarily just because like they're the best, right? Like the best player isn't necessarily going to be your favorite player. Like it's the athlete who like you feel like connected with for some reason. So I started, I'll plug my own self here for a second. I started something with a couple of my friends last summer. We're calling the Track Collective, and basically the idea is just to like help support anyone in the sport of track and field who wants to go pro, because track doesn't have like a draft that you get drafted to a team and then you become part of the system and you kind of like get support that way. We do have a national governing body that does some supportive things, but there's a lot of athletes in our sport who could be like All-American at NCAA's their senior year and have potential to like go pro, but they might need a year or two to continue to develop, and they're not quite there. Like they're not going to quite get a sponsor yet. And what we've seen, and I don't have the data for this, but what I see is that the male athletes who are in that position are much more likely to be like, you know what, F it, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna sleep on my friend's couch, and I'm gonna, try and shoot my shot. I deserve to try and go pro, and I'm good enough, and I can do this. And much more often, again, no data, but my experience, the female athletes are like, I don't know if I'm good enough. That just seems like, these women are so much better than me, and I'm and they end up not going for it, or oh, maybe I'll try and train, but then they get a full-time job, and it doesn't really happen. And so we don't actually know the potential of that athlete. And so what we're trying to do is support these female athletes to be more confident in themselves, and give them a support system, and figure out a financial component to help them kind of bridge the gap to the next thing. But I also am really encouraging them to tell their story, and everyone has a story. So don't feel like, oh, my story's everybody has a story, and the only way you're gonna build a fan base or get people excited about you, get brands excited about you, is to tell your story. And I think things like Strava are a great way to you have control of that. So you don't actually need anyone else to tell your story for you. You can do it yourself. With a little bit of creativity and confidence, you can just do it for yourself. And I think that's where people start becoming that's my favorite athlete, is because she did blah blah blah, and I really relate to that for whatever reason. And so yeah, we just really encourage athletes to do that. And then on the brand side, tell the athlete's story, or let the athlete tell their story, but really try not to create a story and then fit the athlete into your story, because I just don't think that ever reads correctly. It's just never going to sell anything. It's all about letting the athlete tell their story in a way that feels authentic to them, and that's just it's gonna help the athlete, it's gonna help the brand, it's gonna help the sport. Win, win, win.
Yeah, and I think also, speaking of to the same point, media, shoulder programming, studio shows, storytelling around women's sports has always been so limited, because there's maybe one spot in mainstream media, and thankfully our brand Together obviously drives to change that. Re-Inc, I know, drives to change that. We're all driving to tell these stories and amplify them, and that storytelling allows there to be a fan. It allows there to be a little girl who's wait, that person I relate to, and it grows that fan base that is like Tobin said, they opt in left and right. Women's sports fans opt in. The most engaged athletes on social media, while they might have lower following numbers than some of the bigger male athletes, they have something 5x, 10x the engagement.
Loyal.
Yeah, and always
loyal
remember,
fans.
there's fake following. Engagement is the number one thing on following, and that's for anything. Especially for subscription based, you need to have a product that people engage in. There's so much fake following out there. There's also hyper athletes that know their audience, know their fans, know how to create for them, and those are really powerful creators. So don't get worked up in the numbers of following. It doesn't necessarily equate to actual following.
And the fans trust them more. I think they mean more. They want to give more to their sponsorships. I think women athletes are absolutely the way to go for sponsorships, in my opinion. But weird. I'm just here as an advocate, if you can't tell. But also, I'll take one too. It's fine. No. I know we've already spoke a bit about you guys, obviously all being multifaceted individuals and having full holistic identities as also female athletes, but I want to get into that a little bit more, talking about both the balance of being an athlete and an entrepreneur or a mother, and then also just some of your guys' businesses. Alicia speaking to Founding Movers Collective and Mother. Tobin, obviously I want to hear a little bit more about Re-Inc, and then you just spoke on the Track Collective, so.
Beat you to it.
Yeah, you did, which is totally fine. But go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, for me, it's really, so I guess I'll touch a little bit, just and Mother really is what I guess a lot of folks know me as the pregnant runner that's now done the New York Times op-ed, but I'm more than that. I'm not pregnant anymore. I won't be anymore. So you're going to have to just love me for who I am. But and Mother was really off of the time of, how much we kept beating down these doors. And like you said, no one's opening doors for us. We have to like really knock them down. And what are we going to do about that? So I wrote the New York Times op-ed in 2019 where, you know, I was just talking about the sports industry and what happens if you became a mom. And I recognized like we need to go beyond moments, turn it into movement, and then move into impact. So we started the nonprofit organization that is helping break down barriers for women to pursue and thrive in their careers and in their motherhood. And why it's important for us to talk about both is a lot of times within the workplace, it's like you're either at work or you can be a mom. And it's like we want to be able to do both well. So I don't want to be, you know, past, you know, in a boardroom meeting at 5 o'clock when I should be driving home to see my kids, or I need flexible work hours so that I can make sure that I get to the dentist appointment and it doesn't reflect poorly on, you know, how I am as somebody who contributes in the workplace. It's the same for athletes. And what I saw when we did this op-ed was how much people see sports as truly a microcosm of what's happening in the world. And like if we can do it in sports, we can do it anywhere. And our whole mission and our goal from that is to allow for brands to take a look within themselves on how they are treating female athletes holistically across the board. And it can also include motherhood, not only to their athletes, but also in-house. And we want them to be able to match those ethos with, you know, what, like put up or shut up, basically. So we've really been pushing for contractual language changes across all companies. So take a look at your policies. I'm looking at everybody in here. Make sure that it protects, you know, your mothers and your fathers. You know, just know that they're valuable, and what they bring to the workplace is what they learn at home as well. Like I'm telling you right now, the toughest people that you're going to meet are going to be folks who have to juggle how they think through, you know, how they're getting everywhere and being in all the places at the same time. They're instead of like devaluing them. And then for Movers Collective, I started this brand as a way of bringing communities together through our culture and lifestyle. So, you know, I entered the sport of track and field. There's all of the, you know where you're going. It's like you're going to this meet, this meet, this meet. This is the one that you go to. Here's the pinnacle, the Olympics, woo! And you know, if you're not going to be, you know, running 7,000 marathons and halves and all of those things, where are other places? That's what we love about moving our bodies, right? We love the community. That's what's so great about Strava. Where else can we go to have fun in this way that isn't pushing me into something that I don't necessarily want to do? I love marathons, but I don't want to do them all the time. Like I want to find places where I can still be a part of a relay with the team and laugh and like, you know, come together and we can talk about all the small things that we, you know, we liked when we were on teams. So that's really what that is for our, my goals is to really make sure that we can bring community and people into movement in new and accessible ways that aren't pushing them out of moving their bodies.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out Ann Mother. I mean, there's so many women and mothers in the Strava community, and they've been probably on tracks and races where you have stations, lactation stations. Yeah. You've set up actual tools for women and mothers who are out competing in the field. So
yes, absolutely, and that's a big point too. I just want to shout out, if we're going to be plugging, the next phase of Ann Mother is bringing all of the brands on to the collective of making sure that you're supporting mothers in sports. And so I would love for anybody in here that's wondering, like, are we doing the right thing to make sure that we can keep athletes in the game if motherhood becomes a part of their journey? Holla at your girl.
Tobin?
Yeah, I think I just want to say, like, I don't know, everybody gets this, but like, you know, when you just feel like your phone's just like listening to you.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, it is.
It is.
Well, it's funny, like when this opportunity with Strava came about, it's like I'm in the midst of like a really long rehab process from a knee injury, and you know, I have a lot of miles on this body. A lot of successful miles, but a lot of miles. And like part of like return to play, you know, you do like some cycling, and you know, most of it has been like indoors, and now like I'm at the point of my progression where like, you know, I could go start cycling outdoors. And I was like, you know, with Strava, it was like my phone, even more than listening to me, it was like it knew me. And then this opportunity came up, and I was like, oh yeah, Strava, this would be so fun to speak to you all. This is so cool. And then I don't know if Iz King is here. Is here?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, Iz. So like just speaking to like the community, the sports community, because I'll get into re-ink because it was like based on the sports community. But one of my best guy friends, he's a triathlete, and I was like, look, I might be getting into this cycling thing, but like I'm not ready to make that like. I was like, you know, I'm not ready to make that like big investment, and I'm like, you know, I want to have the nice gear. So I'm like, I'm not ready for that. So I was like, I need to put like at least like, I set a goal for myself. I was like, I need to put at least 100 miles like on the road before I make a commitment. I thought this was very wise, and so like I asked my friend, I was like, look, you have a lot of friends in this space, like can you like hook me up with like a bike, like hook me up with the gear, and then like whatever. And Iz came through. Iz is an awesome gravel racer. Iz came through. She hooked me up with the sickest stuff ever. Like I look like a legit pro. I'm working on my FTP. Is that like a thing? Yeah? And then I learned I have to do Mandeville in under 20 minutes. Yeah?
Oh no.
I mean, that's tough.
No.
No?
I've done it one time, and that's
There you go.
hard.
That's what I'm working for. Anyways, that's all to say, like, community, sports and community is huge.
Yeah.
And for us at Re-Ink, we started our company back in 2019, actually, when we were in the middle of our pay equity fight. Also, you know, going to win our second back-to-back World Cup. And it happened because, you know, progress exists in the fighting against and the fighting for. And we were certainly fighting against at that time. We were like banging on the doors, going into these rooms that were really discouraging, and really, really challenging actually. And we could have like easily given up. And we firmly believe in the banging down the doors. It has to happen for progress. But also on the flip side, we wanted to create a vehicle to fight for the things we believe in. And that was the progress and equity that exists within sports that we had experienced throughout our whole entire careers. So we started the vehicle of Re-Ink. You know, we were like, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? Like, we have no idea, but we know we wanted to create a company that we could put our ethos, our values, like all the integrity that we have, and create like a movement around sports progress and equity, and that was the creation of Re-Ink. We started with a brand, a symbol that could be identified throughout the world in our Reeboks, and that was because as sports fans, you know, I'm a Tar Heel. I don't know if there's any Tar Heels in the world. No Tar Heels?
Okay.
Wow.
Where like 90% of the best soccer players come from.
Well, anyways, I'm a Tar Heel, so if I see a Tar Heel sweatshirt on the world, I like immediately like have a connection with that person, right? So I wanted to create like a brand with a connection symbol. You know, that was a huge part of the brand. And then in COVID, we actually are like global reimaginers, which is our community. They said, build us a platform where we can come together like around the things we care about, the sports and the change making. And we were like, okay. So we created this super grungy platform. And it kind of like reminds me of like maybe like the early days of Strava, where it really felt like a co-creation with like the world. And honestly, it's because, you know, women's sports fans are extremely fragmented. And when we talk about progress and equity in this country, you know, women's sports kind of like leads the charge in like going through all these barriers that a lot of countries like can't even talk about the types of things that we have freedom to do in this country. So one of my most like proud things, we have like over 3,000 people within our membership that come together around these things. We have this series that's really popular called Watch With, and it's all throughout the world. People like watch games together. It's like coming together around the women's sports and talk about it. And what's really special is the thing that kind of makes me emotional is we have 60 countries represented on our platform, and it doesn't seem like that big. Like, look at Strava, you guys probably have like millions of people. But when I think of the 60 countries that are represented that we get to kind of give thought partnership, community, connection to around the ideas, these are women that probably it's illegal to play sport. Probably they can't even go watch sport. And all of a sudden they're in, you know, watch with rooms in a world that they could only imagine, they could only dream of. And, you know, it almost reminds me of 4-year-old Tobin, that was kicking a soccer ball before even being a professional was even possible. You know, like, you know, Strava, I think, is to strive and to achieve something that's never been done. Like, that's what women's sports is, and like that's why we built Re-Inc. as a community, is because like we want to achieve something in women's sports and with the community that's never been done before. And
Amazing.
yeah.
You guys also have like sick merch. You had like a black jersey that sold out that I really wanted to.
Yeah, we have like a team. Yeah, we have a team kit.
Yeah.
Of course, we had to have a kit.
Yeah, I guess, duh. No, it's so incredible. And then I know you spoke to the collective. We're just like running a little bit short on time because I think we could talk all day. I know
I feel like this keeps increasing.
I know.
Anybody else look down at that and you're like, I thought time is supposed to go down, not up.
And I'm also like, we're gonna buy 5 minutes from it. I know we were running a little ahead, and so I might buy an extra 2 minutes. Okay, great.
We got the thumbs up.
Because I want to get into the thing that you hit on that is, I think, very much what Strava has built incredibly well, maybe the best out of, I think definitely the best out of anybody in their field, and in a place where people like me, or you who just got into cycling, or you who got into triathlons, everybody who's dove into like the next iteration of their athletic status in that way, can get together and be inspired by each other. Like, I'm like, I want to cycle too. I do not want to run a marathon, but I am down to get into cycling. The cyclers, I'm down to talk to you guys.
Fun.
But I want to get into that, and the culture of women's sports that we kind of already talked about, fans alike, has this feels like it has this common goal of movement and motivation towards like what we're working towards. And I'm thinking about like all the training that you guys have done in your life and the teams that you've been on. Can you talk about like how seeing other women, either maybe it's in a workout, maybe it's on a field, maybe it's on an app, accomplishing something makes you be like, all right, here we go, I got this. Like, I want to speak to that. And I think, Colleen, you said something when we spoke about being nervous about trying out being a triathlete, and then actually getting on your social media and being like, oh, my community was like excited to see me do an amateur status thing after being a pro, and like they made me want to keep going. So I just want to speak to that and the importance of that in this world as women, particularly, like how much we need a community and support.
Yeah, that is incredible.
Whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the triathlon thing, so I'll just say quickly that, yeah, I built my career around track and field, but then there's been a few years now where I just cannot stop getting injured. And so I started cycling and swimming, and I got kind of good at both of those because I was doing those so much. And then, you know, the obvious thing was like cycling, swimming, running. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But then eventually,
You guys are insane.
yeah, eventually I was like, fine, I'll do a triathlon. And yeah, I like won my first triathlon and got my pro card immediately. And I was like, okay.
Pro athletes, man, I tell you what.
Maybe there's something to this triathlon thing. I don't know. So it's like a journey that I'm on. I'm not sure where it's gonna go, but I still want to do track. I know, whatever, but I actually still want to do track. But maybe I'll do that later. But there was definitely some, like I was a little self-conscious and a little bit like I'd lost a lot of confidence from all the injuries that, you know, I just felt a little like, I didn't have that mojo that I had like a few years before that to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go do a triathlon, like come at me. I was like, I'm gonna do this triathlon thing. I don't know if I'm good enough, like, you know, but my community was like so supportive of like me trying something new. I had to be a beginner all over again. Like I had to look silly and make mistakes and learn how to do like a flying mount on my bike. And I posted videos of me doing that for the first time, looking like an insane person. And so I had to be a little vulnerable about like, I'm trying something new. I am not a professional at this yet. Like I'm a beginner at this thing. I look like runners do not make the best swimmers, let me tell you. So I'm not very good at swimming. And so people would like, you know, give me tips on my stroke, but it was a really great opportunity to like get the support from literal strangers to like, yeah, just try, like do something new. We love having you here. Like I'm a triathlete too. I'm so excited that you're getting into triathlon. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I don't know. It was just it felt very like, it made me feel safe, and it made me feel like, I should do this. Like, why not? Like, people are gonna love it. I'll do it. And then, yeah, I was like, oh, this is fun. I still have the freedom to be like, I don't know if that's going to be my next thing or not. Maybe in a year or two, or maybe I'll do that later. But it was really fun to like be a beginner at something and have people like that you've never even met before support you in that journey.
Well, speaking it out loud is manifestation, so you better be careful because it might come faster than you might be the triathlete.
We
here
shall
soon.
see. We shall. Time will tell.
You know what I was gonna say about that? I feel like there's something about professional athletes that like we want for people to know, like, hey, by the way, we like playing other sports. Like, and then when we try to do something else where we just go and have fun, like what we envy, like you were talking about, like what is something that you see other people doing? For me, it's like jumping into like just the joy of moving my body. So like, I know I'm not gonna, sorry, Colleen, we all can't pro car situations, like, but I know I'm not gonna be an Olympian in the marathon. That's not what I'm out there for. I'm out there for the vibe. Like this is so dope. Like running New York City Marathon was so emotional. Like it was amazing. And the thing that was always interesting in it, so like a slight like little deflation where people are like, oh, I definitely expected for you to run faster. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm yeah, next time I'm gonna fuel better. That's what happened. And you're like, I definitely had a good time, I thought. You know, but I think it's the invitation to keep having fun moving your body and like in different ways. If you guys follow me on Strava, it is so unhinged. It is like inline skate today, and then the same day, I'm also going to cycle, and in the same day, it's like, what is going on here? It's just like everything I do, I'm like, make sure this Strava, because I saw that year in sport last time, and I realized I didn't have all of my documentation of my moving, so this year, just keep watching. It's like, walk the kids to school. It's like, you know. But for me, it's just like, the joy is the moving. That's what it is. And so like giving yourself permission to keep doing that. Like I think, you know, growing up, I played sports across the board and like track and field found me. Ugh. Like, you know, the 800 found me. That's like the event like nobody wants to do. But at the same time, I was having fun because, I mean, it literally.
That's not true.
No, I was having fun because of like my team. Like that was fun. That's what kept me going and doing it. It's like, you know, I did long jump, 100, 200 when I was doing track and field, basketball, soccer, all the things. And like the track coach is like, so hey, when season's done, you know, with the soccer team, like, can we get Alicia out here? And like, that was the fun part of just feeling like you belonged to the community, and it made you want to do your very best, like with people believing in you. And your very best could be getting out there and encouraging other people. It can be getting out there and finding something else that brought out a little bit more like joy in you. So
Amazing.
yeah.
I sprinted 400 meters once, and I was like, I'll never do that again. So doubling that sounds nuts. Tobin, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that like sport's really cool. I think like the way that I always thought about like, yeah, greatness, I guess, like in sport in a lot of ways, and this doesn't have to be from a professional level, was like doing something for the first time, like when nobody expects you to do it.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's like redefining even like who you are, or like if you're gonna do something new or whatever, like doing something for the first time when no one expects you to do it. So like winning a World Cup for the first time when no one expects you to do it. But then can you win a World Cup, do something new when everyone expects you to do it? And I think that's kind of like the trajectory of like where I find a lot of, I guess, kind of fuel for success is like the curiosity and the excitement of doing something for the first time when you don't have like the support, when you don't have the sponsors, when you don't have like all these things. Can you like define yourself for the first time, and then can you do it when everyone expects you to do it? Can you do it when you have all the pressure, all of the expectations, all the training, all the resources? Can you do it? And I would just say like, you know, stay curious, but then also stay stay focused, you know, and I think those two things like really aid well to kind of like whatever you want to do in life.
Amazing.
Stay curious, stay focused.
Well, we're definitely out of time. I have one final thing before we wrap up, and that is there was a well-shared thing on the internet that was one woman who tracked her labor on Strava, which like, yeah, obviously. Because if it wasn't on Strava, it didn't happen. But I want to know, what is something women do that they aren't credited for and deserve kudos and should definitely be tracked on Strava? And I can even kick us off. I think for me, It's for every time the stress and anxiety I feel when I say something in a room and then a man says it louder and then it's valid. I'm like, this should be tracked. I don't know if you guys can track my heart rate right now, but this should be tracked. So that's mine.
That is a good one. Maybe I would just say like I'm my own agent, and yeah, that, like the stress of like negotiating deals or like asking for, this is what it is, this is my, this is my fee or whatever. That definitely, I wear a Whoop all the time, and it does actually, if I'm in stressful things, it will pop up as like, activity detected, and it's like, yeah, I was negotiating. So yeah, maybe that's
a good answer.
Yeah.
I don't really have one.
Oh, I would definitely, like I said, you guys now know I turn Strava on for anything. So now when you just see like it going like this, it's because like I'm doing mom things. I still have, I have a 4-year-old, so he's home way more often than, we need him sometimes to be, because the preschool is expensive. So he does like half days most of the day, and then on Fridays he's fully home. So when I'm trying to do all of the things, I'll hit my Strava. So every once in a while, if you guys see like a little cutie pie in the little picture with his Woom bike, it's mom trying to also get a workout in. So something that I think that definitely I do track, but I think that should be more given more kudos to is the amount of time that it's an energy that it takes to take care of yourself and also your children.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, I want to say thank you to all 3 of you. This has been one of the most inspiring panels I can say I've been a part of, and I think together with the continued support and innovation of partners like Strava, we can continue to strive for more. So thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.